We have lots of news to cover today, including some trade rumors around the Montreal Canadiens, a new landing spot possibly for Jeff Petrie, the Washington Capitals still trying to make an improvement to their top six, and a big rumor around Patrick Kane of where he'd like to end up once he's able to return and be healthy. Plus, we have several signings today, including another signing in Toronto, as well as Caleb Jones has finally found a new home. Plus, we have some other news from around the league as well. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of things to talk about here today. Some signings, some other news around the league, a few trade rumors. As you can see, I'm not my normal recording location on the road. Currently visiting Halifax, Nova Scotia. So recording here from the hotel room here late this evening. So trying to get caught up on all of today's news. But before we jump into the news, on this day, we'll take a look back here on this day in hockey history. On this day, 28 years ago, is when the Colorado Avalanche became the Avalanche. We already knew shortly before that, earlier in the offseason, that the Quebec Nordiques were relocating and moving to Colorado, but it was on this day 28 years ago when they unveiled their new name and became the Colorado Avalanche. And it's always tough, I'm sure, for any city to lose their team, but for the Avalanche to go on in their first season after moving from Quebec to win the Stanley Cup, Nordiques fans had to be just gutted and rotted to be able to, to watch that happen. As much as I'm sure they were happy, because I'm still sure they had a lot of connection to a lot of the players, but it was a big day in history when the Avalanche got their team name and identity and went on to have a big run of success and still having a ton of success here today. Now, as I mentioned, we have a few signings. Caleb Jones has finally found himself a new home. He signed a one-year deal with the Carolina Hurricanes, valued at $775,000 for 1 year. So obviously Jones was, I think some people were expecting him to remain in Chicago, but the fact is they're just trying to make room for some of their younger defensemen, and at the same time, unless they bought up Nikita Zaitsev, which was a possibility some thought might happen, there really just wasn't a lot of room there, unfortunately. Now, in Carolina, they've obviously got a lot of depth and a deep blue line. I don't know how much time he'll see in the NHL. He's likely going to end up going on waivers and possibly end up in the American Hockey League. Now, of course, the other advantage here is for him to sign with a team like this is, one, getting on waivers might be a good thing for him to end up with a team where he can get a bigger role. Obviously, signing for league minimum $775 will make it easier for other teams to absorb the cap hit should they decide that he's a player that they like. So we'll see what happens. He either stays in Carolina and it just adds to their depth on a team that's expected to compete and contend for the Stanley Cup this year, or he goes on waivers, most likely after getting cut out of training camp, which would be my prediction, and most likely possibly get claimed. We'll see. I mean, another option here as well is maybe he stays and is like the seventh D and he doesn't play regularly. That's another option as well. I think a lot of people thought just because his big brother Seth Jones was on the Hawks with a long-term lucrative deal that he was kind of guaranteed a spot there, but that's not so much the case. Now, a couple of details out of the Maple Leafs today as well. They've signed their 2023 first-round pick, Easton Cowan. He gets his 3-year entry-level contract signed. I know a lot of people were surprised when he was the announced pick for number 28 overall by the Maple Leafs, but I think they were drafting kind of by need more so than best player available. I mean, he had a decent showing with London, playing in the London Knights program in the OHL. He's in great hands there with the Hunter brothers. Had a pretty good season where he put up 53 points in 68 games played in his draft season. So, I think the kid has potential. My worry for him is that being a first-round pick of the Leafs is that the pressure is going to be very high, and he might have a very tough time kind of living up to that. But at the end of the day, I think he still has decent shot at being an NHL player, and for right now he gets his 3-year ELC. He'll go back to the OHL this year for his draft plus one season likely and still have another opportunity to grow and develop here with the London Knights program. And another Leafs prospect update here as well. One of their picks from the second round of the 2020 draft, Finnish player Ronnie Hirvonen, is making the jump to North America this year and will be playing in the Leafs system. He has left Finland, most likely, of course, because of the deep roster that the Leafs have put together. He most likely has to play with the Marlies in the American Hockey League, but that's fine. He'll be waivers exempt, so he can go down there, learn, get adjusted to the North American style of game, and then, try to make the most of his opportunity here with the Leafs during his North American stay. So we'll see if things work out for him. They do have some other European prospects that look like they might be promising players as well. So be curious to see how things work out. And one other signing as well, Anders Bjork, who was last with the Chicago Blackhawks, is actually staying in the organization, but he gets a new contract for next year, but it's only an American Hockey League deal, so he'll only be able to play in Rockford. Now, if he plays really well and they absolutely decide, we'd like to be able to have an option to call him up, then they can sign him to a two-way deal with an NHL call-up option. But right now, he's got an AHL-only deal, so certainly he's fallen on tough times. Bjork has gone from Boston to Buffalo to Chicago, and Chicago is not a deep team at all. They did add a few pieces this offseason, but considering that he can't even get a contract in American Hockey League only deal, that's saying something. I don't know if he's got much of an NHL future, but we'll see if he can continue to make progress and get noticed in the American Hockey League this year. Some news as well from junior hockey as well. Longtime OHL and CHL Commissioner David Branch is expected to announce that he will be retiring. He's set to retire at the end of the upcoming season. So the 23-24 season is expected to be the final year with him at the helm of the CHL and as well as the OHL. Certainly been a big part of junior hockey. I mean, with all the stuff that's come out lately, there's been so many different scandals with, different things that have gone on in junior with like hazing and all this other stuff that honestly, I kind of wonder if it might be time for, a new regime anyway, just to kind of get a fresh start and have some fresh ideas and everything like that. But he has done a lot of good for the game, as much as I know some people like to put responsibility on him, and I'm not taking it away. I do agree that the ones who lead the game at the highest level, they certainly play a role in the culture, and I'd like to see some things change as well. But he has done a lot of good too. He's put in a lot of time, is devoting a big chunk of his life to junior hockey. So we'll see who might be the next person to kind of take over and lead the CHL once Branch is officially onto retirement. Now, we do have a pretty significant UFA rumor, and this comes from a very reputable source in the Athletic, Arthur Staple, who formerly the Islanders writer, now covering the New York Rangers for the past year or so. Arthur Staple has noted that he's heard from his sources that Patrick Kane would really love an opportunity to return to the Rangers and really have a shot to show what he can do and be productive and healthy. Because when he was traded to the Rangers at the deadline last year, he was not healthy. I think there was a lot of speculation that he may not end up getting dealt at the deadline last year because he was having problems with his hip, and that maybe it was best that he kind of shut things down, get a surgical procedure done, and maybe sign a one-year deal with Chicago and get traded the next year. But at the same time, it kind of became clear that Chicago kind of wanted to move on from Kane and Taves, and certainly looking to kind of create a new era, new regime here on the on-ice product. But they ended up not getting a great return, which is not really their fault. Kane kind of made it known that he didn't really have very many teams that he would go to, so it kind of gave all the leverage on the other side. So Chris Drury and the Rangers were certainly very much interested in making an acquisition to get Kane on a roster. He did have some moments where he looked good and he didn't play that badly, but you could tell he wasn't typically 100%. You knew that something was being dealt with. Now, the problem is he's had hip resurfacing surgery. It is a big recovery. Many say that he likely won't sign a contract until he's healthy and fully recovered and getting closer to being able to play. Now, Nicholas Backstrom of the Capitals is another prime example who's recently had hip resurfacing surgery. It's a big, big deal. And we've seen him come back last year after a long recovery, and he wasn't quite the same. And I know that's why I've seen the reports. Brian McClellan of the Capitals have said that he honestly wonders, if Backstrom can, should he be playing? Is he going to be closer to being 100% and back to what they've seen before? It just may not happen, right? So for Kane, what version of Kane is going to be? Now, of course, nobody's really going to know until he signs and plays. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he signs extremely cheap contract for the remainder of the year, 1 year deal, $1 million or less. That would not shock me at all. If he's really interested in just trying to continue playing because he loves the game and having another chance to win, he's made tons of money. to me, that just wouldn't be something that would surprise me. But we'll see. According to Arthur Staple, Kane would love a shot to be healthy and be productive in New York and have another chance, since he wasn't really healthy the first time around. Now, some other teams to keep an eye on, as I mentioned, the Washington Capitals, another team that we should probably expect, if they don't pull off a trade, it's not going to be because of lack of trying. Brian McClellan, of course, we know he made the big signing not that long ago with Tom Wilson, extending him on a pretty long-term lucrative deal, which I know we kind of were somewhat critical of here a little bit. Obviously, that contract prompted him to speak to the media, and we did learn some other things in that conference, and including the fact that he's not done. He doesn't see himself wanting to go into the season exactly, if he can help it, with exactly what they have. He would still like more of an opportunity to upgrade his top six. So ever since making these comments a few days back, it's kind of gotten people talking, and a lot of suspicions that maybe this could be around Evgeny Kuznetsov. Now, the way he chose to word things, he said that basically there was a lot of conversations around the time of the NHL draft in the earlier part of the offseason around making these kind of trades. Obviously, it hasn't come to fruition yet, and he's hoping some of those talks may kind of pick up where they left off and kind of get them to the finish line, so to speak. That's kind of what he was alluding to. So that's why a lot of people thought maybe he was referring to getting a Kuznetsov trade completed. Now, we know Kuznetsov technically requested a trade. A lot of people thought it might be best for him personally and professionally to get a fresh start. I know he's made some comments as well, and it's tough to say exactly what Kuznetsov thinks of it. I think he would very much welcome it. I don't know that he's going to insist on it, but at the same time, the Capitals were not a great team last year, and we know that as long as Ovechkin's in the lineup there, that they're going to be trying to win. Obviously, there were some links earlier in the offseason linking Kuznetsov to the Nashville Predators and his old coach, Barry Trotz. There was some legit conversations that took place there. I don't know that it's going to be as easy to pull that off now. Certainly, Nashville does have some cap space. They're not as tight as many teams, so there is some flexibility there. They did trade Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene, so to me, it makes sense that they might want to, get a veteran centerman. So the fit's there, the familiarity is there. I just don't know what the trade would look like exactly. If Washington is going to trade Kuznetsov, I suspect they're going to preferably want some sort of a top six forward back, unless they do it in multiple parts and maybe trade Kuznetsov and end up having to go to another team to get another player. I don't know exactly who they would target. Now, I know at one point there was some talk maybe they looked to the Vancouver Canucks because they had a lot of forwards that were potentially available. Hard to say if that kind of comes to be or not, but the Capitals in a top six trade maybe involving Kuznetsov is something that we should keep an eye out for. I wouldn't be completely shocked if they pulled off a trade and maybe Kuznetsov ended up staying either. I'm not sold on the fact that he's gonna go, but I think there's certainly conversations around the fact, seeing if they can make it work. And of course, we know Jeff Petrie and the Montreal Canadiens, Casey DeSmith, very likely one or both are flipped here soon by Montreal and Ken Hughes, the general manager. We talked yesterday about the Dallas Stars being a likely contender and landing spot for Jeff Petrie, and I think there's more word today than some of the other teams. And out of all the other teams mentioned, the team to me that makes the most sense is Minnesota. Now, I've seen teams like Edmonton, Anaheim, Winnipeg all mentioned, and those teams to me just don't make any sense for a couple of reasons. One, I don't think Jeff Petrie really wants to play in Canada, so I think we can take Winnipeg and Edmonton out of the mix. Now, is there a need there? Would there be a fit? Yes, there would be. I just don't think he would want to go there, and he does have a modified no trade where several teams are blocked. And I think those teams likely would be. That's just a gut feeling based on what we know about Jeff Petrie and his preferences. Now, you might wonder, well, why wasn't Montreal in there if he doesn't want to play in Canada anymore? And he was asked this question point blank by Eric Engels of Sportsnet. And the answer from Petrie might surprise you, but essentially it might not. He said he never put Montreal on his no-trade list because he didn't think there was any chance at all they'd ever try to trade back for him. So if you didn't think there's any chance at all that they're ever going to call about you, why would you waste a spot on your no-trade list? You're going to use other locations that you didn't want to go to, right? But we'll see. We don't know for sure what his full list is. But I suspect that Anaheim, Edmonton, and Winnipeg wouldn't be preferable, but the other team that's been brought up is the Minnesota Wild. Now, that might make some sense. They do have, a blue line that maybe they could start the season with, but obviously they were not able to afford to keep Matt Dumba, who just signed in Arizona. Maybe they go after Petrie as a cheaper version. That's kind of the thought process here. They might be able to get Petrie for around $2.3 million, whereas Dumba ended up getting $3.9 from Arizona. So maybe he goes in, plays a smaller role, third pair of defensemen on the right side, some experience, some size, good puck moving. Maybe Billy Guerin decides to try to do that. I'm not sure. I don't think it's a perfect fit. I mean, I know Dallas was mentioned as well, and I wouldn't even completely rule out teams within their division too. I know Detroit would probably be high on Petrie's list. I don't know that they can make that work though. So we'll have to see where things go. Ultimately, Petrie and DeSmith are still expected to be flipped, and the Wild are just the latest team that seem to be on the list here for potential landing spots for Jeff Petrie. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.